Okay, so in this course we're going to cover chromatic harmony. We call it basic chromatic harmony because we're going to use most of what I refer to as the tonicization chords. And these are usually the first things you learn in chromatic harmony, and then two specialty chords, the Augmented 6th chord and then a Neapolitan 6th chord. But chromatic harmony is literally the backbone of many one throughout history. So it's a good thing to learn no matter what style of composition you're into. There's most likely one of these types of chords has occurred in that. Okay, so that's why it's so important to learn this stuff. So we're going to take A major, for instance. Diatonic harmony would be if I just improvise something in here and just use the chords that are in A major, no alterations. Okay, that's diatonic harmony. Nothing used, only chords within the key. Chromatic harmony uses chords outside of the key that are chromatically altered. It gives you very colorful options when it comes to chord progressions. So we're going to cover these types of chords. So chromatic harmony occurs when we use chords that do not belong to the tonality we are working with. That's the simplest way to put it. So diatonic harmony, the chords that just belong to the scale. Okay. Chromatic harmony, chords that do not belong in the scale, but usually resolve to the chords that do belong to the scale. Okay. Or that belong to the tonality. Chords that don't belong and chords that do belong. Now this is not to be confused with modulation. Okay, this is modulation when we're changing tonal centers. Now chromatic harmony can occur in that, like I'm doing here. However, we're changing tonal centers. We're going to deal with chromatic harmony just in the tonal centers, and there's a lot of stuff you can do with just that, just a chromatic harmony within a tonal center. So we're going to deal with chords that I usually refer to as tonicization chords. It treats any diatonic chord other than the one chord as a temporary tonic. It pulls really strong to it, in other words. It resolves really strongly towards it, like the 5 chord does to the 1 chord when you're just in key, okay? Let's do some examples of this. We'll take C major, okay, or C harmonic minor. If the 5 chord tonicizes the 1 chord strongly, okay? Now tonicization, on the other hand, in that 5 chords usually, and like in major, usually always the last chord you hear. It tonicizes that 1 chord, pulls really strong to it. So that same effect can occur to other chords within key. So here's a little chart. We're going to have a PDF for you that explains resolutions, but we're going to go through just the basic chord types we're going to use, or the chord types we're going to use in general, okay? So I put all these chords here as a tonicizing style kind of chords, okay? And if we use C major and we want to tonicize F, for instance, any of those dominant chords will work, just like a dominant chord works within key to the C, the G to C, okay? But a dominant chord would be a chromatically altered chord to go to the F, a tonicizing. Okay, that's tonicizing. It could be a dominant 9th or a flat 9. It doesn't matter. That's why I put etc. You could use 11. Okay, a dominant 11. The diminished chords, same thing. We're not going to use the regular diminished chord much. We're going to do mostly half diminished and fully diminished 7ths. So they all kind of pull towards that F chord again, just like the dominant chords did. Now here's something to note. I wrote enharmonic chords in there, and this also applies to fully diminished 7th chords. You can only really do it 3 times before it's just a respelling of the same chords, same set of notes. And they all can tonicize different chords, so the same set of notes. So we will see this later on. So when I get to the augmented chord here, I'm still consider this a tonicizer because it pulls like nicely, just like that, right towards that F chord again. Different spelling of the augmented chord and harmonic still does the same thing. So, but usually augmented chord resolves up a fourth or down a fifth. We'll have this all in a PDF. So see, if I did E augmented, you could also resolve to an A minor, okay? Up a fourth or down a fifth. So the same set of notes again may have multiple resolutions, and we'll talk about that later. And this brings us to the specialty chords, the augmented sixth chords and the Neapolitan sixth chord. The augmented sixth, it's not that confusing once you see what happens here. If it's literally the flat six of a scale, where the interval of a six is augmented. Literally, that's if I use C major or C minor, that's the note that would where the augmented sixth would occur, the A flat, okay? Now, we have this interval augmented, okay, to an F sharp. If it was an A flat, that would be a flat 7, but that's not what happens here. The degree of a major 6 is augmented. And we're going to go over common resolutions and such like this. The types of, and use all the types of augmented 6 chords. And any of these augmented 6 chords, they're not just limited to minor. A lot of people assume it's just minor this happens, and you could use this in major just fine. And we're going to show that later with many examples. And we're also going to cover less common resolutions. So in that sequence I played before where I was modulating, I'm using the augmented 6 chord a lot here, right here. I used it 2 times in that wandering sequence. So on to the next specialty chord, the Neapolitan 6 chord. It's literally just an inverted flat 2, okay? And most often goes to the 5 chord. So if we're in C major or C minor, that's where it usually go, okay? Again, I'll have a little chart of possible resolutions for all these things. So let me just use the Neapolitan 6 musically for a second. Twice. So you can get a lot of stylistic mileage out of these chromatic chords, okay? I mean, you could do something, let's just do a few examples. Okay, or you could do, let me see, something darker. Okay. Or you could do something even a little bit more harmonically bold. So enjoy the course.